friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Hannah and today I'm going to show you how to make the most beautiful florally lacy cardigan. You can also turn this into a sweater if you would rather. You can also turn it into like a short sleeve. You can turn it even potentially, now that I'm thinking about it, into like a dress. You could, the opportunities are endless. Let me just leave it at that. Crochet makes such beautiful lacy style patterns like this. It's honestly, I think, what it's made for. And I'm so happy that I was able to come out with another video like this. I do have like another florally lace sweater tutorial, one that I got inspired from Pinterest by. But this one, I kind of just knew when I saw the floral motif, I literally knew, I'm like, this has to be a winey colored, like a wine colored cardigan, and it's gonna be so pretty. So as of this point, I actually have not yet assembled it, so I don't know if it actually is gonna work out as of this point. So hopefully you're watching this right now and this is not like deeply archived because everything ultimately failed. So hopefully this tutorial is out there, but I am super excited to share this tutorial with you and I hope you guys absolutely love it. This is what one of the panels looks like. This is what your flower motif is going to come out to be. I am using a 55% cotton, 45% acrylic blend yarn, and it is a size 2 fine. Also, I'm using a 4.5 millimeter hook, but I would definitely recommend using a finer yarn, very, very thin, just because with this lacy type of pattern, it just really makes it look so much more beautiful and drapey, and I definitely would recommend a very thin yarn. A size 2 would be best. Now I'm going to start off by making a slip knot. And for this flower pattern, you need to chain a multiple of 10. So I'm going to go ahead and chain 40 because that is the length that I need for one of my panels. If you would like, you can skip to the middle part of the video and then come back to this to figure out what measurements that you need. But this is going to be one of my side panels, so I need to chain 40 because my back panel is a chain of 80. And my two front panels are going to be both chains of 40. So I'm going to go ahead and chain 40, which is a multiple of 10. So you go ahead and if you need to, you can go to the middle of the video if you need to see how many chains you need to make for your specific cardigan. But I'm just going to go ahead and chain 40 and kind of just explain to you how to make this flower pattern. So we just went ahead and chained our multiple of 10. So what you're going to do is chain a multiple of 10 plus 7. So I chained 40 plus 7 more chains. So if you chained 100, you just need to add 7 more chains. So now I'm going to go skip 6 chains, and in the 7th chain, I'm going to put 1 treble crochet. So skip 6, and then in that 7th chain, you're going to put 1 treble crochet, which counts as a treble crochet, a chain of 2, and then a treble crochet. Now I'm going to go ahead and chain 3, and then I'm going to skip 4 chains. So go ahead and count 4 chains. I'm going to skip 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then in that 5th chain, I'm going to put 1 single crochet. Then I'm going to chain 3 again, skip 4 chains, and into the 5th, I'm going to put a V-stitch, which is 1 treble crochet, chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then a treble crochet in that same stitch. So it is a treble crochet, chain 5, treble crochet, all in that same stitch, which counts as a V-stitch. So then I'm going to chain 3 again, skip 4 chains, go into the 5th with a single crochet. Then I'm going to chain 3 again, skip 4 chains, go into the 5th with another V-stitch, which is a treble crochet, chain 5, and a treble crochet all in the same stitch. Then we're going to chain 3, skip 4 chains, go into the 5th with a single crochet, chain 3, 1, 2, and 3. Then we're going to skip 4 chains again, and the 5th we're going to do our V-stitch again, and as you can see, kind of notice that this pattern is just repeating itself all the way down. So here I'm just putting my V-stitch with a treble crochet, chain 5 treble crochet, all in the same stitch. Then I'm going to chain 3 again, skip 4, go into the 5th with a single crochet, and now I'm going to go ahead and chain 3 again, and in our final stitch we're skipping 4 going into the 5th with a V-stitch, but we're not going to do an entire V-stitch. Remember at the beginning we had I said a treble crochet, chain 2 treble crochet. We're going to do the exact same thing. So I'm going to do a treble crochet, chain 2 treble crochet, all in that same stitch. Because if you remember in the beginning, in that first stitch that we did, we chained that extra 7, and that counted as a treble crochet chain 2, and then we put a treble crochet in that same stitch. So we're just going to mirror exactly what we did in the beginning of the row at the end of the row. So again, in that final stitch we did a treble crochet, chain 2 treble crochet. And this pattern repeats itself so well, it kind of just at the beginning and the end changes just a little bit. So now we are going to go ahead and start our next row, which is row 2, which is going to be one of our repeat rows. So we're going to go ahead and start row 2 by chaining 4, which counts as a single crochet and a chain of 3. Now we're going to turn our work after we chained 4. And as you can see, this single crochet that we made in the previous row, we are going to put our first V-stitch in that single crochet of the previous row. All of the V-stitches go in the single crochets. So I'm going to put a treble crochet, chain 5, and treble crochet all in that same stitch for our V-stitch. And now I'm going to go ahead and chain 3. After we have our V-stitch all done, I'm chaining 3. And then in our next V-stitch of the previous row, as you can see this chain 5, we are going to put our single crochet right in that chain 5 space. And then I'm going to go ahead and chain 3 again, and we are going to come up on another single crochet from the previous row. So in all the single crochet spots, we are going to put our V-stitch of 1 treble crochet, chain 5, and 1 treble crochet in that same stitch. So 1 treble crochet, chain 5, 1 treble crochet again, and then we're going to go ahead and chain 3, 1, 2, 3, And then in that next chain 5 space of our previous row's V-stitch, we are going to put a single crochet. And then you're going to chain 3 again. And then we're going to be coming up to another single crochet from the previous row. So we are going to put our V-stitch in that stitch by doing 1 treble crochet, chain 5, 1 treble crochet, all in the same stitch. After I chain 5, I'm just going to go ahead and put my second treble crochet in that same stitch to have 1 treble crochet, chain 5, 1 treble crochet, all in the same stitch. Then I'm going to go ahead and chain 3, and in that chain 5 space, I'm going to go ahead and put a single crochet. Then chain 3 again. And in the next single crochet, as you can see there, I'm going to put my V-stitch of 1 treble crochet, chain 5, 1 treble crochet, all in the same stitch. After I finish my V-stitch, I'm going to go ahead and chain 3 again. And in that space there, that chain 6 space from the previous row, I'm just going to put 1 single crochet. So I can mirror the beginning of the row where we had our chain of 4, which counted as 1 single crochet in the chain of 3. We ended this row with a chain of 3 and a single crochet. So that is the end of row 2. Now we're going to go ahead and start row 3 by chaining 6, then we're going to turn our work, and in that same stitch, that same single crochet there, we are going to put 1 treble crochet, and this will count as a treble crochet, chain 2, treble crochet. And we're going to do the same thing at the end of the row by putting 1 treble crochet, chain 2, 1 treble crochet in our final stitch. But for now, we're just chaining 6 at the beginning of the row, turning our work, and putting 1 treble crochet in the same stitch. Now I'm going to go ahead and chain 3, and in that chain 5 gap from the previous row, I'm just going to put 1 single crochet. Then I'm going to chain 3 and put a V-stitch in the top of the previous row's single crochet there. That comes up next in our row. I'm going to put 1 treble crochet, chain 5, 1 treble crochet, all in that same stitch to complete our first full V-stitch of this row. And then I'm going to chain 3, one, 2, 3, and then in that chain 5 gap, I'm going to put a single crochet. Then I'm going to chain 3 again, and then in the single crochet, I'm going to put my next V-stitch, 1 treble crochet, chain 5, 1 treble crochet, and as you probably are beginning to notice, this pattern in the middle especially repeats itself all the way throughout. It is just the beginning and the ends of the rows that change a little bit. After completing this V-stitch, I'm going to go ahead and chain 3 again and put a single crochet in that chain 5 gap. Then I'm going to go ahead and chain 3 again and do my next V-stitch in the next single crochet of the row. So I'm just going to do 1 treble crochet, chain 5, 1 treble crochet, all in that same stitch. Then I'm going to chain 3 again, do a single crochet in the top of the chain 5 gap. Then I'm going to chain 3. Now for our final stitch of this row, we're going to need to look very closely where we need to put our half V-stitch. So I'm going to bring the work up nice and close so you can see it. And we are going to put our final treble crochet, chain 2 treble crochet right here in the top of this stitch here, right before our chain 4 where everything kind of connects. Right there we're going to put our treble crochet, chain 2 treble crochet, just like we did in the beginning of the row where we had our chain of 6 and then a treble crochet. So as you can see, I'm just chaining 2 and putting my second treble crochet in that same stitch. And that is the end of row 3, and for row 4 we're actually going to repeat completely row 2. And then when we get to row 5, we're going to completely repeat row 3. So for the rest of the entire pattern, you're just going to repeat rows 2 and 3. So since we just finished row 3, we're going to go ahead and repeat row 2. So you can go ahead, I have all of the chapters marked. You can go all the way back to row 2 to see what you need to do, but I'm just going ahead and chaining 4 like I did in row 2, and then I'm going to do a V-stitch in the next single crochet. So just entirely repeating row 2. Doing my first V-stitch of 1 treble crochet, chain 5, 1 treble crochet, then chaining 3, putting my first single crochet in the chain 5 gap, then chaining 3, putting another V-stitch in the top of the previous row single crochet, just doing 1 treble crochet, chain 5, 1 treble crochet, then chaining 3 again, and you probably understand where I'm going with this. It just basically repeats the entirety of row 2. So again, I will have those chapters up. You can just go ahead for row 4, go all the way back to the chapter that says row 2, and it's going to be your row 4. And then for row 5, you need to completely repeat row 3, which I will also have as a chapter, and then row 6, you repeat row 2. So as you can see, it's just basically flip-flopping back and forth between rows 2 and 3, rows 2 and 3, for however long you need to make your panel. And in a minute I will explain all of the panel sizing, what you need to chain, measurements, all of that. But for now I am just going to go ahead and finish this panel out, my front panel, and I will see you guys once I'm finished. But again, you just completely flip-flop back and forth between rows 2 and 3. So I am on row 4, which is a repeat of row 2, row 5 is a repeat of row 3, row 6 is a repeat of row 2, and so on and so forth until you reach the length that you want. I showed you how to crochet the floral pattern, I'm going to discuss the measurements that you need and all of the different panels and all that. First things first, we have our main panel, which is our back panel, And this is the one that goes from, see, as you can see, mine goes from shoulder to shoulder. So first things first, you're going to want to, for the back panel, you're going to want to chain an amount that reaches from your shoulder to shoulder, but remember it has to be a multiple of 10. So I ended up chaining 80 for mine. So it has to be a multiple of 10, of course, plus 7, but you have to chain your multiple of 10. So go ahead and chain, let's just say 70, then put it up to your shoulders, make sure that it fits. If it doesn't, you need to add more. If it's too small, if it's too big, you need to take some away. But I ended up chaining 80 for my back panel. So whatever you decide to chain, always make note of it because you're going to need to know for the side panels. But for the back panel, you just need to chain an amount that reaches from shoulder to shoulder that is a multiple of 10. Okay, so that's it for the back panel. Now we need to talk about the front panels. Here are my two front panels, and for these I chained 40 because if you remember for our back panel we chained 80. So since there's two panels, we need to take the chain amount of 80 and divide that by 2, which is of course 40. So you made two front panels, 40 chains each. So this one's chain of 40, this one's also chain of 40. Our back panel is also 33 rows. So you're going to want to make sure that your front panels each are 33 rows as well. But one thing to note is that if you make it just 33 rows, there isn't going to be much of a shoulder. There's just going to be, it kind of connecting, the back and the front panel. So we kind of want to have like a little bit of rows here to accommodate for our shoulder. So I ended up making an extra 5 rows. So 33, of course, and then I did an extra 5. So if 5 is too much for you, you don't have to do 5. You can do like 3 or however many you want to. But just to accommodate for that shoulder part here, it's best to add a couple rows. So I did 5 extra rows on top of the 33, but if you need to do more or less, go for it. So quick recap, we have chain of 80, back panel, 33 rows. Then we have our two front panels, chain of 40, 33 rows, plus 5 rows for the shoulder. So now we need to talk about the sleeves. Now for my sleeves, I chained 60, but that is highly dependent on if you want your sleeves to be very tight, if you want them to be super flowy and bell sleevey. I wanted mine to be kind of in the middle, so not super tight, not super flowy either. So this is my sleeve thickness. This is what my sleeve is going to be. So go ahead and chain a multiple of 10 and then wrap that chain around your arm. And if it's too tight, make more. If it's perfect, just leave it. But make sure it's, of course, the multiple of 10. So I chained 60, put it around my arm, and it was perfect for me. So I did a chain of 60 for mine, and then you just keep on crocheting until you reach the length of your arm. And I ended up doing 40 rows for both of my sleeves, and then you, of course, repeat that 2 times for each sleeve. Okay, so that is all of our panels. Now we just need to work on assembling the whole thing together. Before we continue on with the tutorial, I wanted to take a minute to talk about the sponsor of this video, Skillshare. By the end of 2025, I made a goal to knit myself an entire sweater. And at this point, I have 0 knowledge of knitting whatsoever. So of course, I turned to Skillshare to help me out. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creative people just like you and me. A couple days ago, I started this beginner continental knitting class with Vincent Williams. He explains all the basics of knitting in such a simple, easy to understand way. One of the first things he teaches is how to cast on, and then he goes on to explain the knit stitch and purling. I was always so incredibly intimidated by purling and knitting in general, but now I feel so much more confident, and I even made my first knit swatch. As most of you know, I mainly design crochet wearables, but this year, since I'm looking towards exploring knit wearables as well, I took this class from Brandy Harper, where I learned how to create high-quality knit clothing that matches my style. I also learned how to do all the math that goes into designing knitwear, which is extremely helpful when you're trying to make pieces that are custom to fit you perfectly. Skillshare doesn't just have fiber arts classes, though. They have a wide range of topics to choose from. They have illustration, painting, filmmaking, animation, embroidery, photography, just to name a few. The first 500 people to sign up using the link in my description will receive a free entire month trial of Skillshare. Thank you again to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Now we're just going to assemble the panels together with just a simple whip stitch. You can assemble it in any way that you want, just a regular sewing back and forth. I usually use a whip stitch, and I explain this in probably every single video that I make on how to do the whip stitch. So if you would like, you can go ahead for more detailed tutorials on how to do a whip stitch. I have my spiral sweater video that's like a couple videos before this one. I can link it at the top. But I show a lot more in depth how to do the whip stitch, more than I do in this video, just because I do show it so often with every single assembly video that I do. Also my spiral cardigan with a bunch of the spiral squares, I also show a very in-depth way of doing the whip stitch. So if you want, you can go ahead and go to those tutorials if you would like to see a more in-depth way of doing the whip stitch. So what I'm doing first for assembly, I have my back panel and then my 2 front panels laying on top. And then as you can see, those extra 5 rows for the shoulder are kind of just hanging out at the top. The first thing that we're going to do is seam the shoulder panel here to the back panel of our cardigan. So I'm just folding it over. As you can see, we have those extra rows to accommodate for our shoulder. So we're just going to go ahead and do a simple whip stitching method to join. You can use any method that you prefer, but I'm just using the whip stitch method. I'm going in from the right side and then in the left side, and then I'm just going to tie my yarn with just a nice little knot to keep it secure. And next I'm just going to whip stitch all the way down this shoulder panel. And basically what you want to make sure that you do is keep everything nicely lined up. And the really nice thing about this pattern also is that each panel kind of mirrors each other, so it's very easy to match up the panels so everything is straight. So make sure that when you are whip stitching or sewing or joining or however you're going to do it, is that you are joining everything, mirroring each other, mirroring each panel perfectly all the way down as you are seaming it together. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started by inserting my tapestry needle on the right side, on the right panel, which is the back panel, and reinserting it again into the left panel that I'm seaming together. And then I'm going to go ahead again on that right side. Because whip stitching, you're just going on the right side, you're not going right, left, you're just going on the right side. And here I am kind of just stretching out the fabric to make sure that I have everything lined up really well. And just take your time, you don't have to rush. It's just much better to take your time because then you don't miss over stitches or skip stitches. You just want to take your time so everything can just line up perfectly and nicely. And I'm just going to go ahead and keep doing this same whip stitching pattern. And of course, if you need a more detailed tutorial, there are so many also on YouTube for whip stitching, but basically you just go in on the right side. When inserting your tapestry needle to sew together, you just go through the right side, then through the left, and then just pull through your thread, and then again go through the right side to the left, pull through your thread, go through the right side to the left, and just keep on repeating this until you get to the end of where you need to seam together. And then as you can see, as you are whip stitching, you're just making a bunch of loops. So when you get to the final stitch of your whip stitching, you're just going to go under with your tapestry needle under that final loop that you made. And as you can see here, everything is lining up super nicely, because I am making sure I'm going nice and slow and making sure that everything lines up super, super well. So you can go ahead and keep on whip stitching your shoulder panels together, but keep in mind that you really need to make sure that everything is lined up, because if you go to seam together the other shoulder panel and you don't have enough room, it's probably because you didn't line everything up correctly. Because remember, we have 80 stitches that we started with on the back, and then we have 40 and 40 for each side panel. So if you do too much for one side panel, then you won't have enough room for the second side panel. So make sure everything is lined up so that when you sew everything together, it all is perfect and the way that you want it. So I'm just going to go ahead and sew together both of my panels on the shoulder part here, and then we're going to go ahead and seam on our sleeves. I now need to move my piece to the floor because it is just much too big for my desk, but basically you want to lay out yours exactly like I have mine here. And then we are going to go ahead and sew on our sleeves with the same whip stitching method. As you can see, I already did the left sleeve. So now we're going to go ahead and do the right sleeve just with the same whip stitching method that we used for the shoulders and for the other sleeve. So to make sure that everything is nice and straight, as you can see, we have our shoulder seam. Remember that we just whip stitched together right where I'm pointing with my tapestry needle here. We want to make sure that our sleeve panel is right in the middle of that seam. So we're going to lay out our sleeve here that we have, and we're going to kind of stretch it as much as possible just to make sure that we have the full width of it. And my sleeve, when I measured it, was 12 inches across when I stretched it out to its nice full width. And I drew out this very silly diagram to hopefully help you understand a little bit better and maybe help you out a little bit. But basically, as you can see I'm doing here, I am measuring my panel width-wise, and of course it is 12 inches. So as you could see in the diagram, I want to make sure that from my shoulder seam, I want 6 inches on each side and that shoulder seam right in the middle. So 6 inches on one side, then we have our shoulder seam, and then the rest of the 6 inches. But again, it's better to see it visually, so hopefully the little diagram that I wrote will help you out. And now I'm just putting a stitch marker right on that shoulder seam and then attaching it to my sleeve. Now that I have everything nicely lined up, I want to make sure that it's going to stay there. And also I'm going to attach another stitch marker all the way to the other end because I'm going to start on the end that is closest to me, whip stitching up, and then at the top I want to just add a stitch marker, and then in the middle, because again I have everything nicely lined up and I don't want it to shift when I am seaming it all up. So that is why I add the stitch markers, just to make sure everything stays nicely lined up. Now we're just going to follow the same whip stitching method, starting from here where my tapestry needle is pointing and all the way to this top stitch marker here. So again, we have 6 inches to the middle seam of our shoulder, and then all the way up 6 inches again. So I'm just going to go ahead and do my whip stitching all the way up the sleeve, and I'm going to repeat this again. I already did my other side, but you are going to go ahead and repeat this for the other side of your sleeve. Okay, so remember how for our shoulder panels we lined everything up perfectly because they were like exact mirrors of each other? For sewing on our sleeve, as you can see, the panels are not going in the same direction. The front panels and the back panel, they're going vertically, and then the sleeve panel is going horizontally. So they're not even going the same way at all. So kind of just do your best to line it up as nicely as possible so you don't have any awkward bunching or stretching. Just make it as close as possible. Once you are done sewing both sleeves on the panel, you can see it will look like this. You are going to go ahead and grab the shoulder part here, or just right in the middle, and just flop it, just like I'm doing here. And then we're going to line everything up to prepare for sewing it all together. So remember that you want your bottom, your front panels and your back panels, the bottom of them to line up nicely. So I'm just laying everything out nice and flat, as you can see here, and I'm going to sew right from where my finger is going, from the bottom of the cardigan to the armpit and all the way down the sleeve. Okay, so one thing to remember is that when you are crocheting the panels together, make sure that you line up each panel because they're obviously the same exact motif. So you're going to want to line it up. See how everything's lined up? But if it's not, then it's going to look like this over here. See how nice and lined up it is over on this side? And then if you get it kind of messed up, it's going to look like that. And then it's going to be uneven once you reach your arm seam here. So just make sure that you're lining everything up as you go. Now we are going to go ahead and make a very long chain for the front tie of the cardigan. I'll insert a picture to show you what I mean, but basically I'm going to make a very tight chain, And I made my chain 28 inches. You can make yours longer or shorter depending on the size of the bow that you want. But I'm just going to make mine a total of 28 inches. And again, I'm making my chain very, very tight because I kind of want it to look more so braided and not like just a loose floppy chain. I kind of want it to look like a little bit kind of like a braided rope. And so that is why I'm just making sure that my chains are nice and tight. As you can see, my working yarn is in my left hand and my pointer finger is just kind of stretching, and I'll show you that a little bit better in just a second. So after every chain I make, I'm just stretching my pointer finger to make that chain tighter. As you can see, I'm just pulling my pointer finger out to make those chains nice and tight. Just like that. And just keep on going until you have whatever length of your tie that you want. Once I'm done, I'm just going to cut my yarn, pull out my hook, and give it a nice tug to make sure everything is secure. I'm just going to tug both ends and then trim the tails to the same length. So I'm just lining them up together. And I'm going to trim them. You can trim them fairly short. I'm probably doing like maybe, I don't even know, is that like a ½ inch almost? I'm not quite sure. But here is the finished cardigan. I think it looks absolutely stunning. I am so happy with the finished result. I mean, the flowers are just so beautiful and the laciness is just, I love crochet for this and how beautiful and drapey it is by using a nice thin yarn, and I'm just so happy with it, and I hope you guys absolutely love this pattern too. You can style this in so many ways with so many different aesthetics. As you can see here, I styled mine with a black velvet skirt and a corset and just like a very chunky pendant necklace from the 70s. It could honestly fit such a wide range of aesthetics. So whatever your style is, this cardigan will probably be perfect for you because you can easily switch up the colors to match your style. And we have reached the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have the most beautiful and blessed day. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more tutorials and content just like this. And as always, if you crochet your own, don't forget to tag me. I love seeing your guys' finished pieces. I hope you have a beautiful day. Bye guys!